Hi, I'm Nick and this is the TBT channel. Today we're going to take a look at one of the most important air rifles from my childhood. I think I'm pretty safe saying that. Um, the 80s. Now I was a teenager in the early 80s. Not really a child, but it was the point where I started to get into air rifles. And my mum had a Grattan catalogue. I think she had a K's catalogue as well. Maybe even a Freeman's one. I can't remember exactly, but I know that catalogues were the thing in the 80s. It was the 1980s equivalent to the Argos laminated book of dreams. You'd spend ages going through it, looking at all the different stuff. It was just amazing. And there was a period between looking at the toys and sticking pages together in the lingerie section where all that really mattered was that page and a half, maybe 2 pages that had the shooting stuff. It was usually just before or just after the fishing gear, which was okay as well. But these were guns. Now, we had quite posh catalogues. So in ours, we had the Webley range of air rifles. They were predominantly the things that were in there. And the top of the tree was this, the Webley Vulcan. It's from a time where air rifles they were becoming serious. You know, they'd been not so much a child's plaything, but they were kind of, well, they're going to throw the lead in that direction. They'd started to become precision things. They were accurate, and I'm talking like the average air rifles that the average person bought. I know there's always been the target stuff, but this was really right up there when it came to the quality. Now, this one here I've literally just picked up. It's not mine, I'm sad to say. It belongs to a fella that I've just bought a motorbike from. Yes, I bought a motorbike today. What could possibly go wrong there? We'll have a video on that. You'll see that. You'll like it. It's going to be good. But we were chatting, and it turns out that he's into fishing, he's into shooting, he's into just toys in general. We really got talking. We were talking about shooting, and I said about we were talking about the motorbike. I said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to put it on my YouTube channel. Normally it's just shooting stuff." That's what he said. "Oh, I like shooting too." Anyway, it got around to air rifles, and I mentioned that's what I happen to do. He said, "Oh, I've got an air rifle, but it's gone a bit weak. I think it needs a new spring." I said, "Well, go get it. Let's have a look." And it was this Webley Vulcan. So I've agreed to bring it home. I'm going to do a few videos on it. I'm going to take it apart and I'm going to put a kit in it. I'm going to make a kit for it. So you'll be able to buy a kit for your Webley Vulcan soon. Make a kit for it and then give it back to him, and then we're going to go shooting. It's going to be awesome. But I wanted to show you this because it was in our catalogue. The Vulcan was at the top. Then I think there was the Viscount. Then there was the Tracker. Then there was the Hurricane and Tempest as well. They were in there, and I think there was a Relum. I think the Relum was just there so the poor kids had something they could dream about. But and Webley Tempests. Webley Tempests, I've got a fascination with Webley Tempests, and that's down to the Grattan catalogue. Because it was in there, I think it was 80 quid, even back in the early 80s, it was 80 quid. That's how massively overpriced those catalogues were. But I've had lots of Tempests since, and I've always got a Tempest or Tempest derivative hanging around the place somewhere. I love them. But the unobtainable one was the Vulcan. The Tracker was the sexy one. The Tracker was the one that didn't have open sights on it, and it had a muzzle weight on the end of the barrel. It looked kind of like a silencer, so that was really cool. But bizarrely enough, the Tracker wasn't full power. It isn't a full UK power air rifle, whereas this one is. Also, the Tracker, I've had several of them because of the Grattan catalogue. They've all shot terribly. I've never had one that could actually group. So if you have, let me know, because I'd love to get one that can group. So the Vulcan, top of the tree, full power UK powered air rifle, 12 foot-pounds. And it's got, I mean, it's got a micrometer adjustable rear sight on it. These things were important in the 80s because a telescopic sight was very expensive. The one that was on this actually is an Apollo Silver Star 4x32. And I happen to know from memory that the Apollo Silver Star, okay, the Gold Star was better, but this was a good quality scope. But 4x32, you were talking about 35, 40 quid back then for one of these scopes, and you had to buy the mounts as well. That's why we always used to have those little 4x15s or 4x20s that came with the mounts built in, because they were much cheaper. They were rubbish, but they were much cheaper, and they came with mounts. But this, I mean, a 4x32 on a Webley Vulcan back in the early 80s, this was, you know, this was the rich kids gun. It is a fantastic gun, and it is a fantastic gun today. If you want a collectible British air rifle, really, you've got this, you've got various BSAs, as long as they're before 1985, I think, is when the quality started to drop. And you had the air arms come out by then, the side levers? Or were they a little, I think they were mid-80s, weren't they, when they started to come through? They were Jackal before that, which was Sussex Armoury, and that became air arms, the side levers. They were good, but this is a proper air rifle because it's a break barrel. And as we all know, a proper air rifle is a break barrel. Now, it's the first time I've pulled this down. It actually feels like there's still quite a bit of spring strength there. So I'm gonna be putting it over the chrono before I take it apart, and you will also see, if I turn this around carefully, you will also see there's a considerable amount of surface rust on this gun. It's not been mistreated. It's just how, if you're looking for one of these, this is pretty much what you're going to find. If you find one like this, don't be scared of it. It's going to have surface rust on there, but everything feels good. It's all tight, the barrel's tight, and the woodwork is still very nice. The woodwork's got a few marks on it, but it's a nice looking stock. Accuracy wise, these are better today than the older BSAs are in 2.2, because the older BSAs tended to be a 5.6mm barrel, the original Imperial 2.2 5.6mm, whereas this one's quite clearly stamped 5.5mm 2.2, so a modern pellet will fit it. With the BSAs of the time, the pellets tend to be too loose and they kind of rattle down the barrel, and it doesn't assist groups at the other end. But I believe this is still very much a usable classic. If you want a gun for field use, in my opinion, now this is my opinion, if your opinion is different, your opinion is equally valid and equally correct. My opinion is a 2.2 spring-powered air rifle in the field is for 30 meters or 30 yards. 35 if you're a really good shot. Simply because you've got recoil happening, you've got the trajectory of a 2.2, which out to 30-35 yards, you know, you half inch either side of the crosshairs, that's not an issue. But realistically, you're restricted, the gun and the user together are restricted, in my opinion, to 30-35 yards maximum, and this is still capable of a good group at that range. So it can be used for a field gun. It can be used to go out and walk around the hedgerows and fields looking for dinner. Absolutely no reason why not. And in my mind, these are preferable to a BSA because, again, it's an aesthetic, it's an opinion. I wasn't keen on that rounded look, the slope of the back of the BSA. It offended me somewhere deep inside, and I wasn't keen. Not as much as an HW35. You know, it didn't make me physically sick. It just offended me mildly inside. So if you see one of these for sale, I would say buy it. We're going to have a look over the next few videos. I'm going to take the gun apart. As I say, I'm going to make a kit for it. I'm going to develop a kit for it. I think I know roughly what I'm going to be finding in there from memory. That should help. I'm not sure what we can do with the trigger, but I do know I can show you a trick for taking surface rust off of the barrel. And looking at this one, it's quite extensive, the surface rust, but I think once we've taken it off, it's going to leave a patina rather than damage. So it's going to add to the aesthetic, certainly better than the surface rust is, rather than detract from it. But this is the kind of gun you want to keep it as original as possible. You could get it re-blacked, but it will look a bit odd because it's 40 odd years old. 40 odd years old. Where's the time gone? 40 odd years old now. So we are going to be taking it apart. We're going to be doing a little light restoration on it, and we're going to get it shooting better than it did when it came out of the factory, and I'm quite excited about that. And once I've done that, I'm also going to be doing some target shooting with it. I'm going to set it on a bench, I'm going to set it up proper hold, find some pellets, and I'm going to see what kind of groups I can get. Now you've got to remember the death of this rifle, apart from the fact, where did we go? We went Vulcan, then I think we went the Tomahawk and Longbow, and then it went to Turkey. Webley moved production to Turkey. That's kind of, a lot of people are of the opinion that's when the quality took a nosedive. So this was, well, the Eclipse as well, but we'll come to that. This was of a time when this was the best you could get, and then the HW77 appeared on the market, and that changed everything. That really changed everything. That's when the Eclipse came out to compete with the HW77, and it didn't do well enough to carry on, whereas the HW77 40 years later you can still buy. So there we are. Should you buy a Webley Vulcan? Yes. It's another yes. Not just because it's a gun you should buy it. This is a yes because it was a great quality item at the time. It stood the test of time. It's still capable today. It's not the same as a modern gun. It's not the same as a 1980 77, but at the time it was great, and it is still sufficiently good to do most jobs, and it's a pleasant thing to own. Now please like, subscribe and hit notifications, and then you will see the next video on this when I start taking it apart. And until then, goodbye. Thank you very much for watching. And I'm going to go and get my rose tinted glasses out and have a little plink in the back garden with this. See you soon.